Prime is Sonic's last shot to solidify its relevance as a franchise.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Just hear me out. Over the years, Sonic has been walking on a tightrope for the longest time, with many of their games being kind of average at best to downright putrid at worst. While Frontiers is considered to be a success by many, the bar for this game was very low considering the recent track record of the franchise. Looking at the other types of media for Sonic, the only thing of note that was a net positive for it is the Sonic movie series. While the last TV series was almost 10 years ago in Sonic Boom, which was initially considered a dud. Now Sonic is dipping his toes back into the episodic scene with Prime. Considering this, I believe this is the most important series that can stamp the beginning of the franchise's redemption arc or completely plummet what little momentum the Sonic franchise has. Here's why.
Cause fuck you, Sonic Lost World.
Oh, this is horrible. Horrible controls.
Don't drop your boy in the toilet.
As I have alluded to earlier, Sonic's recent releases have not been the greatest, to put it lightly. Many people would agree that when it comes to the gaming side of it, the last great game the franchise had was Sonic Mania, which was seen as a love letter to the fans. Outside of that, the franchise never really had a game that was considered to elevate the franchise until Sonic Frontiers. While Frontiers has been the most well-received game since Mania, I wouldn't say that it saved the franchise as a whole. I consider it more to be a step forward after a lot of steps backwards. While recency bias is definitely in full swing when it comes to this particular franchise, it's not a game that I would say placed Sonic back in the discussion. It did bring it closer to relevance, but it's still going to take a lot to bring back the franchise back to respectability. The Sonic games need to return to being consistently good. But I hear you ask, what about the... Trust me, I know the movies exist, and I am with the majority that the two movies were solid watches. However, to say that they dodged the bullet with the first movie would be a massive understatement, and we all know why. The original design caused Sega and Paramount to get dunked on by the Sonic fanbase harder than a grown man dunking on a kid. The design was so bad, the model was rehashed to playing a minor role in another movie to make fun of how bad the design was. I know many people believed at the time that this design was a ploy to get people to talk about the movie, but if that were the case, it definitely was a stupid idea that worked. I don't think that's the case personally. My bet would be that it was a major panic move from the two companies. Though this incident is a prime example of how tight the rope is for Sonic as a franchise. When the franchise goes into a wild direction, it can either be perceived very well or very horrendously. There isn't a middle ground to be found like in other franchises like Mario for Nintendo, though they themselves are diving into the film industry for the first time, which certainly has its risks. Fight back! Fight back! Fight back! So while the Sonic movie series was able to prevent itself from drowning and stay above water these past couple of years, they have to continue to be perfect, and it's not going to last forever. The movie series has to have an ending, because what you don't want is a Fast and Furious or MCU situation. While movies are great, it cannot be the main focal point of the franchise for too long. Which is what brings me back to... Now, when discussing the history of Sonic within the animation industry, it hasn't been a relevant talking point in the past 20 years. The last show that Sonic has had was way back in 2014 when Sonic Boom arrived on Cartoon Network. Unfortunately, the show was attached to what is argued to be one of the worst games in the franchise's history with the same name. While it is seen in better light nowadays, it was universally casted away from having any sort of chance only because of association. So the last show Sonic had that was extremely relevant was Sonic X. So Prime has a very large gap that it needs to fill. Even then, it could also be a good thing, because it gives a clean slate. It's not at risk of being compared to other incarnations like the TMNT franchise. So with that advantage in play, the main thing Prime needs to do is give us the Sonic that we have loved over the years and remind us why so many stood by this franchise. Whether it's by giving us certain references to the gaming franchise itself, or given the overall feel of what previous iconic games have offered. That's important because I think a majority of the fan base wants that nostalgic feel to hit them and remind them what it was like when they first touched a game from this franchise. I know for myself, Sonic has certainly been great for me the few times he came into my life. From playing Sonic Heroes for the first time, to owning my first game in Sonic Battle, and 100%ing my first game in Sonic Colors. Being able to spark that love for the franchise and also inviting others with that same feel will give Prime the leg up in bringing Sonic back to full relevancy. With a combination of the other successes in the movies and Frontiers, I think it will be enough consistency of good products that will let me confidently say that Sonic is now back into full swing as a competent franchise again. With the first season of the series already out on Netflix, I would say yes. The show has given off the same vibes and enjoyment that the other recent products have brought to the table. The concept of the show has been very intriguing to witness develop. They kept some of the recognizable features of the setting we are so accustomed to seeing when different versions of it are introduced. Sonic himself still has the same witty charm we are accustomed to. Not to mention the animation, especially the action, has matched that same intensity as the modern Sonic games gave to us. Now, of course, the show has some flaws, mainly with the story feeling a bit too scattered with the amount of flashbacks it shows off, not to mention there are a couple of settings that aren't the most intriguing to see. However, the characters and concepts keeps the interest very high for me, and I definitely look forward to seeing what else is in store for the series. Cause while it has started off with a positive reception, we still need to keep our guard up to make sure that they treat this show right. Let's just hope that the show doesn't show up as feet in one of the worlds.